So let's talk about touch-up paint. Touch-up paint is something I've been irrationally passionate about for years now. And I'm gonna start this off by saying that touch-up paint will never be 100% perfect. Whether it's the body guy down the street you've known for 30 years, or your neighbor who knows a guy, or just the detailer who thinks he's the best thing since sliced bread, none of them can perfect touch-up paint. Can they get good results? Sure. Can they get acceptable results? Sure. Can they get perfect results? Likely not. So, with that being said, I am going to be demonstrating the Dr.ColorChip touch-up paint system. This is one of their commercial systems. And I really just want to touch base on a lot of the things that I kind of wish was a little more told in YouTube videos and just in the industry overall. I feel like touch-up paint is very important. I feel like it has a high demand for a lot of people. I also feel like the internet makes it seem a little too glorified in the area it shouldn't be glorified in, and I feel like it is not glorified enough in the area it should be glorified in. So without further ado, let's get started. So I have my own paint code from Dr.ColorChip. 1G3 is what I'm going to be using for, my paint. Well, for my chip, I should say. So I am going to be using this little squeegee. For the squeegee method, I'm going to put literally this small drop onto my little applicator. I'm going to put it on there. Squeegee. And I might do that like 1 or 2 more times, and then I will use the Seal Act to get rid of the excessive paint. And that's pretty much the Dr.ColorChip method in a nutshell. So here's what I want to talk about. Touch-up paint is incredible for preventing rust and preventing the damage from kind of just like spreading over time, through rust, corrosion, and, just, spreading. So that is where its value comes from. Its value does not come from repainting the panel. Because the only way you can get deep scratches that are down to metal and paint chips that are down to metal or down to plastic perfect is by getting them completely repainted and resprayed. Especially on a, high metallic vehicle such as this 4Runner where, in order to blend, you'd have to repaint half the freaking car. So you kind of have to weigh out your options. Do I want a perfect repair and repaint half my car? Or do I want to do a little bit of touch-up paint and live with the fact that it's not 100% perfect? That is where touch-up paint's value comes from. Because functionality-wise, touch-up paint kind of does the same thing that repainting would, in this sense, where you're preventing rust and you're preventing further damage, but it's not going to be perfect. So how exactly is it not going to be perfect? Let's get into that. But first, I'm going to put another layer on. So there are a couple of things to keep in mind when it comes to what to really expect. First of all, you're going to get way better results on a solid color vehicle. Pearl colored cars and metallic colored cars are going to have a slight different pigmentation and touch-up paint than the actual car itself. This is for a few reasons. One of the main things I like to tell people, especially with pearl and metallic vehicles, is that, first of all, you can have this paint code with 6 different variations. Some of them have over 20 different variations. So you can have the same paint and the same paint code with 20 different variations, meaning if you have one variation of that paint code as touch-up paint and you're putting it on this variation, it's gonna be different. See what I'm saying? So another thing that I like to tell people about is that the metallic ratio in the touch-up paint itself and the pearl ratio in the touch-up paint itself has a different concentration you know, inside of this bottle when applied the way that I have been applying it, in comparison to it being sprayed on the car, especially from robot arms at factory, you know, dealership, factory manufacturers, car manufacturers. So with that being said, that difference in metallic ratio can also give a different pigmentation and a different kind of color overall. You'll notice that on the same paint code metallics in touch-up paint will be kind of darker, sometimes lighter, but mostly darker than the metallic on the vehicle, and that's because of the metallic ratio. So that's something to keep in mind heavily for metallic colors and pearl colors. So now we're gonna show, well, I'm gonna show the second half of Dr.ColorChip's method with the Seal Act and show what to expect from that too, because it does theoretically do exactly what you'd want it to do, but there's a drawback, and I'll show you that drawback. So you're gonna shake it up, and I got a good tip from a good PDR buddy of mine, Ryan, who told me to get a toll cut block and put it in just like this inside this the fabric that Dr.ColorChip gives you. And you're gonna use the Seal Act in this to remove the excess paint in order to only fill the chip. And that's what makes Dr.ColorChip so great. And honestly, it is a really good method. It's extremely simple. And, you know, it doesn't harm any of the surrounding paint, which is super important and something I'm gonna touch up on, you know, after this. So as you can see, we have this going on. I'm gonna wipe that off. And what you're kind of wanting from the Dr.ColorChip method is, this is how I describe it anyway, you kind of want your paint chip to look like a fisheye, because that's how you know you've got it all filled in, first of all. And secondly, that's how you kind of know you've gotten the quality repair for using touch-up paint. Okay, let's talk about the drawbacks and the main drawback that I was talking about earlier. So the Seal Act, which I have the label off right now, it's some really good stuff. It works. It will turn your glossy paint matte though. Like, it'll give it a matte finish. So like if you have this great glossy panel and you put your touch-up paint on and you smear it and you have this great glossy finish and it doesn't look too bad, sometimes when you use the Seal Act, it'll turn it like a matte color, and now you have and now it kind of sticks out. You know what I mean? I notice it the worst on black vehicles especially since you know, the white little chips stand out the most. When you put the touch-up paint on, if if the Seal Act pretty much even touches the black touch-up paint, it's gonna become like a matte finish and it's gonna look weird. It almost looks like Play-Doh, like black Play-Doh or whatever color you have Play-Doh. So that's the main drawback with using Seal Act. So it does work and I use it, but if there was like a Seal Act that left it glossy, touch-up paint would be like revolutionized at that point, even further than Dr.ColorChip already has. So those are drawbacks, but now let's look at the advantages and strengths of not just touch-up paint, but Dr.ColorChip's version of touch-up paint. Because there are a lot of videos online and a lot of information online where people will do this and then they'll sand it and then they'll do it again, then they'll sand it, then they'll do it again, and then they'll sand it again. And what you're doing with all that sanding is you're limiting the lifespan of the clear coat and the paint on the surrounding clear coat of the chip. And why would you want to do that? Why would you want to repair something to give it life by taking the life away from the stuff around it? That doesn't make any sense. So the Dr.ColorChip method is the most comprehensive method in my personal opinion, because it's not damaging any of the surrounding clear coat or paint. So like, yeah, you could get a little better of a repair if you did this and then did clear coat and then sanded it and then polished it. But like, what's the lifespan? I mean, that's all up to, you know, how thick the paint, how thick the clear coat is in that area. But like with this method, you can, you know, have a little bit of mental peace that you're not just sanding away the surrounding clear coat to make something look a little better. So touch-up paint, Dr.ColorChip specifically, and Dr.ColorChip related methods and programs, I should say, they do have their drawbacks, and no, they're not going to be perfect, but you're not damaging the surrounding paint. You're keeping your factory paint, your OEM paint, which is like huge. And not only that, like your resale value is also going to be higher because there's no one like, you know, sanding out this entire area and repainting the entire area for a little chip. Like you can say with touch-up paint that you have all your factory paint because there was no real big repainting done. So there are definitely a ton of strengths in getting touch-up paint as well as drawbacks, but I honestly feel like the strengths outweigh the drawbacks. And I just, you know, it's up to you as to what, you know, you think, but those are things worth considering. So to finish this all off, I'm gonna ask you, and you're gonna ask me, there's just gonna be a question in the air, okay? And it's gonna be, why would I hire someone, such as myself, with this kind of setup to do touch-up paint for me, when you could just go to the Dr.ColorChip website, get your own touch-up paint, do it yourself because it's so easy? Well, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, I already have all the paints, and people like me already have all the paints, so you wouldn't really need to wait for your own paint code. Like, we can order it, and we can typically get it for less expensive than what you would get it for because we are authorized dealers. So we can get it for you know, a cheaper price, which is great. Not only that, we also have the experience to make it, you know, we know little tips and tricks to make it look a little better than just doing it yourself. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that you couldn't get a great result if you did it yourself, but like, you know, we're in the industry. We've been doing this for a while. We know a thing or two about a thing or two and, you know, can make it look decent. So I'm just gonna tie this all up with touch-up paint's not gonna be perfect. It is gonna help protect you against rust and corrosion. It will help. And you don't have to do it yourself. You can hire someone who has experience with it to where you don't have to go through the ordering process. You don't have to do it yourself. You don't have to, you know, you don't have to second guess if you even got the right paint code because we've been doing this long enough. We know a thing or two about a thing or two, and we can help. So this statement may seem a little much, but I would argue that touch-up paint is just as important as paintless stent repair, paint protection film, ceramic coatings. It's just as important as all those things in regards to keeping your factory paint based off of what we've all gone over today. So all in all, it's just really important to consider touch-up paint as another means to keeping your factory paint as well. And that's really it.